So the cessation of sufferings. In these suttas, the meditation discourse is the longest in a sense that it is explained in length, one at a time. And monks, what is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering? It is the total fading away and cessation of this very craving. It's abandoning, forsaking the liberation and detachment from it. But where is this craving effectively abandoned? How could it be abandoned? Whatever delightful and pleasurable things there are in this world, this craving is effectively abandoned and made extinct. So the Buddha goes through the one by one, the six senses, then the context, and then the consciousness, and the other, and the mental formation that need to practice detachment, so that we do not crave for the senses or crave for the objects or the feelings or even the thinking. Initial application where the mind goes in search, vitakka, in search for the cravings. Why? Because of the enjoyable, pleasurable objects. Like I said before, that it is not in one go can we get rid of them. But the Bodhisattva is different. He has cultivated his paramis, and at one go, at one chop, he can cut off the cravings in his mind, and then he gained realization. So the question is, when we talk about the parami, what has that to do with our four foundation of mindfulness? But it has a great deal to do with our four foundation of mindfulness. Great deal to do with our practice. Even though we are, or we may not be striving towards Buddhahood, because the perfection of the 10 paramis belonging to Buddhahood, to be a Sammasambuddha. But a Sammasambuddha merely means enlightenment. So this parami is still essential for enlightenment. Therefore, as we develop this parami, as we practice patience to bear the unpleasant objects, so we don't get angry, we just don't crave for pleasant sound or praises. So we patiently bear unpleasant sound, people who criticize, people who blame us, who wrong us, who scolded us, who abuse us. And we practice patience. Now that is one of the paramis. Now if we do not practice that, the patient parami, then we can't stand it. We would say that it is only fair that he do this to me, I will do that back to him. In Hokkien we say, che ít chap go, first and 15. If he do you on the first, you wait for 15. When he's unaware, then you do it back to him. So that is 15. So it is not good to do that, to take revenge. Because the mind harbors hatred, ill will. And if the mind harbors that, then we are far from realization, far from the path and fruition, from the cessation of this craving. Why? Because of this clinging to pleasant sound. Because by nature, the mind likes praises, because these are pleasurable things. These are things that are very pleasant, enjoyable. So if we can't have that, and the opposite appears, then we have a lot of hatred and anger. So these are the form of paramis, which perhaps I would go through more detail in later of my talks, how these paramis are needed, not only in the sitting meditation, but also in daily life. We need to bear unpleasant things, even though we crave for pleasant things. In seeing, we like to see pleasurable things, pretty things, but we do not like to see ugly things. We don't like to see people dying or unpleasant or ugly things. We don't like to see that. So, patient to bear. We have to patient to bear. Then we could have metta arising, another part of the paramis, to have loving kindness. Even though it is a pleasant object, it is unpleasant object, it is neutral object, still metta arises in the mind. And therefore metta is a parami. If you do not develop metta, then how could you overcome unpleasant objects, people who hurt you, harm you? Then you would harbor a lot of hatred, a lot of revenge, a lot of remorse. And so there would be no samadhi. There will be no peace of mind, there will be no concentration, therefore there will be no realization. So how do we really cut off this craving? Well, by way of the paramis that we develop. We can't have one chop and become Sammasambuddha or Arahants unless we have the paramis. We have trained them in the past life, and with just 4 stanza or 4 lines, we could penetrate into reality, the Dhamma, meaning Dhammanupassana, the 4th foundation of mindfulness, and thereby gain enlightenment. So there are other paramis as well, that even though in daily life we need to practice, as well as the formal meditation when we sit. So we need to practice them. Then, coming to this, the cessation of suffering, then the Buddha says, as long, O bhikkhus, as the absolute truth, intuitive knowledge regarding these 4 noble truths, under their 3 aspects and 12 modes, were not perfectly clear to me, so long I did not acknowledge in this world, inclusive of gods, maras and brahmas, and amongst the hosts of ascetic and priests and gods and men. When, O bhikkhus, the absolute truth, intuitive knowledge regarding these 4 noble truths. Now it is just not thinking about the 4 noble truths. It is this knowledge arising of the 4 noble truths. It's just not thinking about what is this truth, this is the 4 noble truths, suffering, then the cause of suffering, cessation, and Noble Eightfold Path. It is not just the thinking. It is the knowing which the Buddha says. Not just the thinking. As long as it is, this does not arise in the mind of the Buddha, seeing clearly, then the Buddha says that he did not announce himself to be the Buddha. In his formal training, the Buddha never announced it until he has this intuitive knowledge regarding the 4 noble truths. And there arose in me the knowledge and insight. Unshakable is the deliverance of my mind. This is my last birth. Now there is no existence again. In other words, there will be no more suffering. Now when we talk about cessation of suffering, it is connected to Nibbana. Nibbana is the cessation of suffering. And when the Buddha said there is no more existence, there's no more life, there's no more birth. So it is something which is very difficult and hard to comprehend. It sounds like extinction. That there is this extinction. The I, there is no more I taking rebirth. But it is not extinction. The I is merely a concept. So there is no really I that pass away. Alright? Therefore, if one say Nibbana is to exist, then it is not so. There is no I to exist. But if one say Nibbana is to die, extinction of the I, it is not so, because there is no I to extinct. Now this is something very profound, and only through direct experience can there be this knowing. And in the realization, Makkapala, in the path and fusion, even in the first stream, in the first Sotapan, attainment of the first stages of sainthood, there arises this knowledge, this knowing that there is no I in this mind and body. The I is a conventional reality, conventional truth, but it has no reality in the ultimate truth. There is this mind and body that is existing depending on this craving connected to ignorance. Now, how does this I arises? When this mind and body comes together and the craving arises, then the concept, I want to see, I want to smell, I want to taste, I want to hear, I want to think. Now this I concept arises when there is this craving arises in our mind. And why is this craving arises? Again, depending on pleasurable things in this world, the Buddha said. Why must there be craving? Because there are pleasurable things in this world, desirable things in this world. There is these alluring things in this world. Therefore, there is this craving established. When this craving established, then the I want to see, I want to hear, I want to think. This is I, me, belongs to me. So all this is a formation of the mind. The mind creates this concept. It is agreed upon as concept reality. They say, this is my car, it belongs to me, it is mine. It is so because it is agreed upon. I work very hard, I save, I buy, this is mine. Now it is true in a conventional sense, and because we are trapped in this conventional sense, because people are trapped, they form this concept and they trap in these concepts and thereby created wars and anger and killing and frustration and sadness. So when one realizes that this craving is the cause and there is no I, then therefore one no longer kills or steals things that does not belong to oneself. His precepts becomes very strong because of this concept of I is not there. But there is still craving. A Sotapan still crave. Only in the Arahantship there is total disappearing, the cutting off of craving. A first stage of sainthood, they do get married. Even before they are married, they get married. Even the first state of sainthood. Because they have overcome the views. They can perceive clearly this mind and body. There is absence of a I residing in this body or outside or in between. But there is still this craving. So the craving is so strong. First, the view is eliminated. The wrong view is eliminated. Then comes the craving and the anger. And the last one towards arahantship, the mana, the pride. Then, when the Buddha expounded these Four Noble Truths, and the first one that got enlightened by the Buddha, Kondanya, one of the disciples, 5 disciples who left him, and thinking that the Buddha, the Bodhisattva has gave up his struggle for enlightenment. And when the Buddha expounded to the 5, Kondana seen the truth. He has seen the Four Noble Truths expounded by the Buddha. He really know, not just by knowledge, but really know, intuitive knowledge. And so, he was the first disciple who gained enlightenment, and his body becomes very bright, and the light shoot up to the heavenly world, and the devas, here in the scriptures, hearing these, the devas and those Brahma who heard these Four Noble Truths expounded by the Buddha, Chattu Maharajika, Tavatimsa, Yama, Tusita, Nimaranarati, Paranimati, Tawasawati, the Brahma world, Parisaji, Brahma, Purohita, they have all the name, various planes where the Brahma stays. Like if you stay in Penang, then you have Penang Jits. Okay, KL, then you have a name, you stay in KL. Or you stay in Australia, you're an Australian. And so these Brahma too have their planes, have their name. So, at that very moment, at that very instant, this cry extended as far as the Brahma realm. The 10,000 world system quaked, tottered, and trembled violently. So, when the Buddha expounded these Four Noble Truths, the 10,000 world system is shaken by these truths. They suddenly tremble. So the whole of the Buddha's teaching is based on the Four Noble Truths. And the practice is all based on the Four Noble Truths. By way of practicing mindfulness, which I told you last week, we are practicing this detachment. And the very source where craving arises, we practice detachment. And when detachment arises, then craving ceases. When craving is totally cut off, enlightenment is realized. One experiences Dhamma. Dhamma is experienced, Buddha say, in 2 ways. One way is by mind and body. One experiences the unconditioned reality, ultimate unconditioned reality. One experience, according to the Abhidhamma, 3 moments of Dhamma. Dhamma arises in the mind as an object, and that is the realization, Dhamma. The Dhamma objects, the cessation. Now then, again, Dhamma experienced without mind and body. When mind and body ceases, they do not come together, and Dhamma is experienced without mind and body, which the Buddha says, it is very peaceful. Now how do the Buddha knows? Without mind and body, they're only experienced by those Arahant without mind and body. Then there is another experience, Nirodha Samapatti. Only the Arahants, Anagami, and the Buddha or Pacceka Buddha can experience this Nirodha Samapatti, in a sense that only when they, instead of getting into the 5th jhanas, they get into Nirodha Samapatti. They can stay there for 7 days. Nirodha means that the cessation of mind. Now, only the Buddha Anagami, third sainthood, Pacceka Buddha or Arahant can experience that. The mind sees. There is no more mind. You could see the body, but actually, it is just a piece of rupa, form, only the elements that you can see. But it is still alive. It still has life. Mind and body, it still has the body life. But the mind ceases. There's no more mind. And they stay in that mental state can last for 7 days. And when they come back to the body, then they wake up from the Nirodha Samapatti. Then the Buddha explained what he have experienced. That is so blissful, so peaceful. It is the highest bliss. Nibbana is the highest bliss. Because the Buddha have experienced Nibbana, the cessation of mind. This is something very deep and profound. But does not mean that how can we attain it when it is so beyond us? But even along the way we benefited, even though we do not come to that experience, the cessation of this mind. But along the way of meditation, we have experienced a lot of benefits. Experience how to disentangle from all these problems in our mind. Instead of creating more problems in our mind, we learn how to disentangle them, how to untie the knots, untie our problems. Then we learn how to detach from our problems, detach from all the sufferings. And certain levels that we have experienced, the calmness, the peace, it may not be the 100% peace of Nibbana, but we do experience certain level of peacefulness as we meditate. Every moment when the mind stays with the rise and fall, that is the moment of peace. Meaning to say, the mind is absence from craving, absence from hatred, ill will, absence from longing, planning, absence from all the distress. Buddha says the craving and the lamentation, the both two that disturb our mind. And if we enlarge that moment to more moments, then we enlarge the peace in our mind. Our mind becomes more and more peaceful every moment that you accumulate. So, some teachers use this word momentary concentration. Our mindfulness meditation is called momentary concentration. Khanika samadhi in Pali. Khanika, moment to moment. We achieve the peace of mind by moment to moment. Every moment your mind stays with the rise, you are free from craving, you are free from suffering. And as you add more and more moments, when it becomes enlarged, you can experience deeper and deeper peace of mind. It becomes more deep as concentration grows from each moment to moment. When concentration becomes strong, you get a very deep sense of calmness and peacefulness. Now that is how we dislodge, disentangle. The Buddha says, got rid of the craving in our mind. And we do that gently. Not at once can we force the mind to do it, but gently. We do it moments to moments to moment. Every time we are free, every time we come for the meditation class, we have 1 hour of sitting. And we have many moments of mental freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from craving. There's no craving when our mind is nothing rising and falling. There's no hatred, no ill will. There's no delusion or fantasy, because you are noting things as they really are. So there are no hallucination, no fantasy, no dreaming. It is real. Your mind is free from the three roots of craving, ill will, and delusion. So that is where the freedom is. The Buddha have experienced all these. The Buddha says very clearly that in these cause, this arising of this craving, where there is this seeing, the sixth sense base, there's this feeling that we crave to feel, we crave to experience the senses by seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. We crave for imagination, which is vitakka, because it is pleasurable. Our mind likes to dream about pleasant things. We avoid unpleasant things. So normally our mind goes towards pleasant things, but not unpleasant things. But only when the unpleasant things are very strong, then it keeps appearing in our mind. Now if we can control this vitakka, this mental state, and direct it to the present thing all the time in our mind, then there would be no suffering. There will be only pleasure. But it is not so. The problem is, it is not so. We cannot direct our mind to only thinking of the pleasant things because of the accumulation of unpleasant things that the mind stays on. It becomes strong and appear as an object in our mind. And it is not so because of apparent reality. Because we see people growing old, even though we do not want to see. We experience the old age in ourselves, even though we do not want to experience that. We see people dying. We see people sick, getting sick, having cancer. We see people dead or dead. We see all these things. Even if we refuse to see them, we still see them. We can't escape from these conventional reality because they exist. So even though there are many people who do not want to see all these things, but they feel it themselves when they grow old, when they get sick, when they are dying. So therefore this vitakka, this mental state of directing only to pleasurable object cannot be sustained. We cannot sustain it. If we can sustain this vitakka, then there will be a lot of happiness. There will be no suffering. So how could we sustain this vitakka? How do we sustain this vitakka? There's a way of sustaining this vitakka. How do we sustain? How? How do you sustain it? Have you experienced it? Well, at least in theory, you know how to sustain that? We cannot sustain the vitakka in these pleasurable objects of enjoyment of the senses. But vitakka can be sustained in the practice of concentration, meditation. That is why, when this vitakka is sustained in the rise and fall, or whatever meditation object is sustained, when this vitakka is sustained, joy and happiness arises in our mind. And when you're able to sustain this vitakka, means your concentration becomes strong. And the happiness that you can get in meditation surpasses the happiness that you can get through the enjoyment of the senses, because it can be sustained for a long time. It can be sustained for a long time. You can go in, people who get into absorption, they go in, go out, go in, go out. They come out only to wash themselves, to eat, to go to jamban, and then they go in again. And they sustain that for life. They do not want to come out, do not want to mix with people. They just stay alone in solitude. They become hermit. And so they sustain their happiness in such way. But not so for lay people. We can't do that. For lay people, we can't, no man is an island. We can't stay by ourselves. We rely on each other, on our family, take care of our family, our work, our responsibility. We can't do that. But there are those, very few, minority, who have tasted this vitaka, the sustaining, the happiness that arises, and therefore, their mind directed into solitude. Now this vitaka, so the Buddha says that in these souls where craving arises, you need to practice detachment. In these souls of feeling where pleasurable things arises, we have to note feeling. That's how we practice our meditation. Pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling, we note. Painful feeling. Itchiness, numbness, we note. Just note them. By noting them comes this detachment of mind. We slowly chop off this craving. Slowly. We can still do our craving, our enjoyment of senses. Only thing is the 5 precepts. You must hold on to the 5 precepts so that you will not fall down in next life in the woeful state. There are those who only enjoy the senses, but they do not produce more merits, do not practice the precept, but they just enjoy. But when the merits are all used up, then the next birth, they go down. Even though they don't hurt people, they don't harm people, they just enjoying themselves. They say, I don't harm people, I got this money, I just enjoy myself, I just see nice things, I just buy what I want, I just enjoy my food, I just go traveling, I do everything I like to do. It's my money, inheritance or whatever it is, I earn it. But if they don't accumulate merits, they don't maintain the 5 precepts, but only on the craving, but when they use up, then they are reborn in the lower world, even though they have not harmed people. That is very strange. Even though they just enjoy themselves, they do not harm anybody. But just by that enjoyment, by that craving, when the merits are used up, the next life they fall down to the lower world. We always think that when we do bad things, we harm people, then the karma is very strong. Then the next birth will be pulled down to the lower world by our bad action. But on the other hand, even though we don't harm people, we just enjoy ourselves, one can still be pulled down to the lower world. So when you enjoy yourself, must maintain your precepts. 5 precepts. And as you practice your meditation, detachment, which gradually become less and less dependent on the enjoyment of our senses, automatic, no need to force. It becomes easily satisfied, automatic. Whether you can have it, okay. You don't have it, you can't have it, also okay. Now if you have that mental state, that means you have come a long way in your meditation. Then you know for yourself, you have come a long way in the practice of detachment. If you enjoy your television and somebody switch it off and you say, okay, switch it off, I go get myself a drink. When somebody switch it off, in your mind you say, I'm going to murder you. Then you know, your meditation not so good. Not so good. Detachment not so strong. You're still so attached to the senses. That is why all this killing and fighting and comes about, because of this strong attachment to the senses. But when you enjoy, keep your precepts, same time you just practice your detachment, and these are the gradual practice. It's a very gradual, and you do not experience a lot of frustration. There are those who like to do it suddenly. They read about Dhamma, they learn about Dhamma, suddenly they try to cut off the senses, then they have mental conflict. I've come across a few of them who develop mental conflict. Example, a layman trying to live the life of a monk. Then they have conflict. Because they are laymen, they are just earning a living, they are having a family, but they try to practice 227 precepts. What do you think? That is beyond them. They have tried to do things by force, and so they experience mental conflict, disturbances. And when they come to see me, then I explain to them. The Buddha says that the ocean slopes gradually, step by step. It is not sudden deepness, but it's gradual. And so is our practice in the Noble Eightfold Path. Gradual. Keep on practice. Put our focus on and keep on walking. And very soon you see the light at the end of the tunnel. The cessation of suffering, which is Nibbana. So we will come to the way out of suffering. The Buddha having gone out of suffering, reflect on his practice. How did he get out of the suffering? And he knows that he has to go step by step. He cannot at once go and cut it off. And what is the step by step? Then the Buddha starts to see. Now that's the fantastic thing of the Buddha. When he put his mind into it, all is revealed, the Buddha say. There is nothing that is hidden from the vision of the Buddha. When he put his mind into it, he told the monk, "Oh monks, if you take this pin or needle and you buried it in the haystack, and you ask the Buddha, where is this needle? And the Buddha put his mind into it. Where is this needle? And once the needle is revealed. And even so, you take this needle, you go to the mighty ocean, you throw it down in the ocean, and you ask the Buddha, where is this needle? And when the Buddha put his mind to it, where is this needle? The needle is revealed. Now that is the fantastic achievement of a Sammasambuddha. And when he put his mind into what is this path that leads to the cessation of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path is revealed. Just review in the mind of the Buddha. What is this noble path? Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Then the Buddha says, Sila, morality, precepts, as the foundation for Samadhi, for concentration or tranquility. If there is no precepts, there is no peace of mind. So precept is the base, foundation for building up Samadhi. And what is the purpose of the Samadhi? This Samadhi concentration is essential for realization, to penetrate. Now, as I've spoken before, when the mind gets into Samadhi, concentration, the defilements are suppressed. As you do rising, falling, defilements cannot arise in your mind as long as you maintain this rising and falling. And if you maintain this rising and falling for a certain period of time, it is called concentration. And when the concentration becomes strong, the defilements all sink to the bottom of your mind, your consciousness, then you see clearly whatever things that arises internally or externally. So that is called vipassana, seeing things clearly as they really are. Not thinking, not imagine, not analyzing, but knowing, clearly comprehending things as they really are. Once you're able to do that, then you are getting into insight. You see things people don't see, or you perceive things people don't perceive. With your mind, not with your eyes. With your mind, you perceive things that normal people who do not develop concentration could never see. So that is called wisdom. Once you're able to perceive, then sila, samadhi, panya. Buddha say, intuitive knowledge, intuitive wisdom. Now these are the Noble Eightfold Path leading to the cessation of suffering. So suffering is the resultant. Craving is the cause. The Noble Eightfold Path is the cause. Nibbana is the resultant. So in these Four Noble Truths, two are the causes, two are the resultants. Clear or not? What is suffering? Suffering is the result of our craving. So craving is the cause. Suffering is the resultant of our craving. That's where suffering is. And what is Nibbana? Nibbana is the resultant. And what is the cause leading to Nibbana? The Noble Eightfold Path is the cause. Without the Noble Eightfold Path, there will be no Nibbana. Without the cause, there will be no resultant. There must also be a cause for resultant. So whatever happened to you here and now, there is a cause. Now is your resultant. If you are here tonight meditating, you must have done something good, something fantastic good in your past. Otherwise, there will be no resultant. You will not be sitting here tonight listening to the Four Noble Truths. Right? So, I'll continue on with the Noble Eightfold Path in the next lesson. Okay? I'll go more into detail, into the deeper analysis, how it is related to our practice of the Four Foundations of mindfulness.